Hey world! So this is the third part of my Christmas story reading. In case you're new to this, I am writing a Christmas story this December, which basically means that I'm writing one short chapter every day. My Wattpad link is down below where I'll post these chapters every day. And since this is a continuous story, it would make more sense to watch the first and second video of this reading first. So these links will be down in the description as well. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed it so far. And yeah, I'm just gonna read this week's parts of the Christmas story to you. Let me know what you think in the comments down below and have fun. December 14th. It was a quiet day, the streets still full of snow and therefore relatively empty of Christmas shoppers, which was why Alea had decided to wrap herself in scarf and hat to get some last presents in town. She walked down the main shopping road, trying to avoid the crowded Christmas marketplace, but still enjoying the fairy lights brightening up the street and filling the shopping windows. Not really sure what exactly she was looking for, since she only needed some small presents for relatives they'd visit on Christmas Day, she simply trotted along with a few other people surrounding her, occasionally stopping to stroll through a shop or to get herself a new hot drink. After about 2 hours of walking from one store to the other and back again, Alea had freezing cold feet and a bag of 4 presents for others and 3 for herself. On her way to the bus station, she stopped at a small coffee shop that she didn't often visit, but that was decorated with a little Christmas tree, golden stars hanging from the roof, and candles giving the rather small room a cozy feeling that invited Alea to come inside to warm her hands with a cup of spicy tea. She went inside and found a desk with 2 chairs at the front window, where she let her bags fall onto one chair and herself onto the other, before taking off her hat and taking a look at the menu. It smelled of hundreds of teas, fruity and spicy, black tea and coffee combined with a slight scent of apple pie. When the barista came, Alea ordered a blueberry tea with sugar. Then she began to look at the people around her, to study their faces, to watch their eyes when they listened to their counterparts. There were old couples, mothers with their kids, groups of friends at every age. But at the sight of the 2 people sitting right at the back of the room, Alea nearly jumped up in shock. There, in the quiet dimness of the shop, facing each other while talking excitingly, sat Josh and Till. She breathed in sharply. Then she reacted abruptly, getting off of her chair and taking her bags. They couldn't see her. Whatever they were doing here, why ever Till was talking to Josh, Alea couldn't deal with this right now. Before she left, she heard the barista shouting after her, but she closed the door and ran the few meters to the next bus stop, only allowing herself to breathe properly again when she sat down on one of the old, dirty benches at the back of the bus. December 15th. Okay. What now? Talk about it or not? Alea stood next to the classroom door, thinking about how exactly she should behave towards Till. Even though she had been trying to figure this out since yesterday afternoon, she still hadn't come to a clear solution, and so now, directly before it was inevitable to face him, she started to panic. Of course, she knew that she should ask him about the events first, but she just felt so angry, so betrayed. Alea! She jumped in shock as someone called her name from the end of the hallway. Sam. Shit, she hadn't even thought about the possibility that the 2 weren't inside yet. And now they were walking up to her, both with their fantastic smiles and no worries about what was on Alea's mind. Sam, hi! And that was the exact moment she spontaneously decided to simply ignore Till, who gave her a raised eyebrow at the missing greeting. The 3 of them walked inside, Alea asking Sam about her weekend, while Till trotted after them. Okay, did I miss something? He finally asked about 7 minutes later, when the girls were still chatting without including him in any of their conversation, even though he sat directly next to them. Sam reacted with her typically oblivious expression, and Elea tried to do the same, but he stared at her accusingly. Is this some sort of punishment for my bad mood last week? What? No, of course not. She felt guilty, but clinged to the picture of him listening interestedly to her ex in the coffee shop yesterday. Well, good, because, in case you've forgotten, I didn't say a single bad word about your own moods, did I now? His voice had gotten louder while he spoke, so Elea tried her best to stay calm. As I said, I'm not bitter about a few bad days. That happens to everybody. Then what are you bitter about? He questioned, looking her dead in the eye. About you and Josh, it slipped out of her mouth loudly. For a second, he looked guilty, shocked that she knew, and even a bit concerned. Then his facial expression went back to the indifferent mask she already knew by now, and he simply asked, "What do you mean?" That's it. She stood up furiously from her previous seat on the desk and shouted at him, "Don't you act so innocent. I saw you at the coffee shop yesterday, talking like you were best friends. How could you do this?" Now he was the one responding calm. "I don't have to act innocent. I am. Because it is no crime to meet a guy from school and chat to him. In fact, it's totally normal. And only because you don't like him, it doesn't give you the right to keep me, or anyone else for that matter, from talking to him. You just can't stand that someone might actually forgive him for what he did." That hurt. Mostly because it was true. But she was still angry at him, still felt betrayed, and so she used the moment the teacher entered the room to hiss at him, "You'll have to pick a side. And if you're friends with him, well, don't come to me when he starts treating you like shit." Before walking around the totally terrified Sam and sit down on a chair as far away from him as possible. She regretted the ultimatum the second she had voiced it, but now it was too late, and she could only hope that she didn't just lose a very good friend. December 16th. Sam, I'm really sorry you're in the middle of this, but don't try to reconcile us, okay? Elea felt horrible. She never meant to push Till away from her, and especially not for Sam to be torn between the two of them and her good nature of wanting everyone to be happy. "Elea, just listen for a second, would you? Till never wanted to betray you or whatever you think this is. I know you only meant well. He'd never hurt anyone." Sam was close to tears, her eyes reflecting the light a dozen times and the water building up on their corners. Elea wanted to hug her, to make her stop being sad, to tell her everything would be all right. But that would be a lie. She was still angry at Till, even if right now all she wanted for him was to forgive her and talk to her again, instead of sitting on the seat next to her, but acting as if she didn't even exist. But she also knew that she screwed up. Nonetheless, he was the one who had to apologize, and before he didn't, Elea couldn't comfort Sam because right now, nothing was okay. How could he mean well? How could he possibly think I'd be okay with this? She sounded tired. They've had this discussion about 1,000,000 times, in 100 variations, but it always ended in Sam telling her that Till only meant well. Well, seemed as if Sam wouldn't keep it that way, because now she considered Elea's normally unanswered question with a nervous side glare at her brother, who still acted as if the girls belonged to the background of falling snow. Then she took a deep breath and finally said, "He meant well for me. He told Josh not to play with me the same way you told me not to fall for him. Not that either of that would have been necessary," she added eagerly, her eyes locked with her brother's, who looked up in surprise and seemed to want to say something, but at his sister's gaze he simply nodded. "What?" was Elea's late reaction. December 17th. They were standing in front of a huge house. For some reason, Ilya had always imagined Sam and Till to live in a normal, small flat just like herself, but apparently she'd been wrong. Till had invited her over to reconcile after the whole Joff thing, and so now she stood outside his house, waiting for him to find his keys in the depths of the backpack. When she walked in, the house looked even bigger than from outside, the hallway guiding them to a nice living room with stairs going upstairs and an impressive kitchen next to it. "Wow," she breathed out while letting Till take her jacket. "Yours is beautiful." He smiled shyly, obviously a bit embarrassed by the size of their living location, and mumbled, "Yeah, well, my dad's working for the government and they won't let him rent anything normal." She giggled at that and followed him into the kitchen, where he made them a cup of tea. Afterwards they went upstairs in his room, which was just as big as one would have guessed, but still very cozy, being filled with dark blue curtains on the walls that made the whole room look like you stood in the night sky. All the while they had talked about school and family, about small easy stuff, but not about the one thing they obviously really should discuss. So now was the time. Sitting down on a soft white couch and gesturing for her to do the same, Till started this difficult conversation. "Okay, we have to get this out of the way." "I agree," she nodded, waiting for him to make the first step. He waited as well, seemingly hoping for her to begin, but then sighed and started. "Fine. So, as you know now, I never intended to turn against you or anything." She nodded guiltily, her gaze on the cup of tea in her hands. "Right. But even though I kind of understand it, your reaction was still completely over the top." He smiled at her, expressing his wish for this to be a friendly conversation and not any sort of accusation. "Yes and no." She didn't look at him directly, gazing around the room instead while searching for the explanation he was obviously awaiting. "I don't really know how to explain this. To be honest, I don't even know what happened with me. But I somehow got scared when I saw you two together." She finally met his eyes and was confronted with confusion. "Well, not really scared, more like, I don't know, afraid? That you leave? That you choose him? What is it with you and choosing a side?" His voice only sounded partly amused. She sighed, rolling her eyes at herself. "I don't know. You see, we've been together for 1.5 years, so naturally we have a lot of the same friends who'd only spent time with us as a couple, or at least got to know us as one. So after the breakup, there really was a lot of people who had to choose. And since we didn't tell everyone what exactly had happened..." She took a sip of her tea to cover the break in her voice at the thought. "Quite a few of them chose him. I mean, most of them wanted to stay friends with both of us. But he is the social one after all. The one to go out with and do sports and make plans. So at the end of the relationship, I didn't only lose him, but also a lot of my friends. And I guess I overreacted because I was afraid the same would happen with you." She looked at him sadly. "I'm really sorry." He smiled a bit awkwardly, patting her leg while saying, "It's okay. I understand why you would think that. But just come and talk to me about stuff like this the next time, okay?" "Okay," she smiled back. "Great. So what are you doing on Christmas?" December 18th. "Did you talk to your dad yet?" she asked when she walked up to Till, who already sat on their desk. After having sorted out their problem yesterday, they had talked about their Christmas plans, and he had told her that he'd like to see his mom over the holiday but didn't know how to tell his dad. He shook his head. It wasn't the right moment yet. He's always so busy this time of the year. His eyes were sad even though he tried to sound indifferent. Plus, I'm not even completely sure what to ask from him. Ilya sat down next to him, leaning her backpack against the table and her back against the radiator. "Well, that you want to visit your mother over the holiday." When he didn't look at her, She raised an eyebrow and added, "Right?" He fought with his own words, hands messaging his tights nervously. "Yeah, I guess. But I'd also like to, for us to celebrate together as a family." She stopped his stuttering, her voice full of empathy for his difficult situation. "Yes," he breathed out, thankfully for her understanding and at the same time ashamed for these stupid, over-emotional and totally irrational thoughts. But that would never happen, so I guess the visit will be fine. He was back to his old light-hearted whatever behavior that Elia already knew as his mask by now, so she decided not to give up. "And what do you think Sam wants?" His sister was his biggest weakness. He'd do everything for her to be happy. And they both knew that Sam didn't take their parents' divorce easily, that she still hoped for a happy ending. Ilya studied Til's face while he looked over to his laughing sister in the middle of the classroom. It was difficult to read his thoughts, but at least he obviously did think about her words. "You could just ask your dad," she said softly, making him look at her again. "He can't do more than say no, and maybe he'll even agree." He didn't answer, but she saw a determination grow in his eyes. December 19th. The three of them sat at Ilya and Til's desk, talking about nothing in particular. Outside it had stopped snowing, and the white blanket covering the world was brightened by the warm light of the December sun, making the ground shimmer like a million crystals. Inside, the classroom was filled with the smell of various hot drinks and the sound of quiet laughter, since everyone seemed to be in a good mood. Sam, Til, and Ilya were no exception. They looked out of the window every now and then, smiling at the beautiful picture, before getting back to their light-hearted conversation. At the moment, Sam was talking about her first training session with the local basketball team she'd had this Wednesday. She was wildly gesturing with her arms, and the other two laughed about the description of her teammates, until Sam stopped. Before they could ask what was wrong, someone cleared their throat behind them. Ilya cursed the person in her mind before slowly turning around, forcing herself to keep a smile on her lips present. "Hey guys," Josh said, not looking at anyone. "Hi," she answered shortly. Ilya," he looked at her nervously, still not meeting her eyes. "Could I maybe talk to you?" She raised her eyebrows before responding with, "We're kind of having a conversation." She noticed him eyeing the siblings helplessly, as if hoping one of them would convince her otherwise, but they both stayed quiet. "It'll only take a second," he tried again. "Well, then it can't be that important," she said, already turning back to Sam. Josh stood there for a few more moments, seemingly unsure what to do, before he sighed and went back to his desk. Til looked after him, then at Ilya, and asked seriously, "Have you guys ever had a proper talk after the breakup?" She was surprised by this, but reacted easily. "No, and there's no need to." Til locked eyes with his sister for a second, then he turned back to Ilya. "Listen, I understand that you don't want to talk to him, but maybe you should hear him out. Maybe what he wants to tell you is important." She shot him an angry look. "What, do you think anything he could say would maybe make up for what he did?" Til put his hands up in defense, leaning away from her a bit. No, of course not, but maybe it would explain it. I just think it wouldn't do you any bad to listen." She stared out of the window, taking in the view of white diamonds falling down from the trees and into an ocean of their kind. She answered calmly, quietly, "I don't want any explanations. I want to turn back time and be happy again. But nothing he'd say could make that happen, so there is no reason for me to hear him out." And so they didn't talk about Josh any longer. December 20th. Her flat was filled with Christmas music, the sound of bells ringing in her ears while she finished wrapping another present. There already was a small tower of beautiful packages to her left, all of them shining in red or golden paper. To her right stood the big bag with the rest of them that read "Don't touch" on the front in fat red letters, just in case her parents decided to come into her room when she wasn't there. She grinned when taking out the next one, an electronic mini message machine for her dad, and started humming along to the music while cutting the red paper in size. After that one, she grabbed into the bag blindly, taking out a small box, and stopped. She had forgotten this one, banished the memory. But now that she held it in hands, the tears came streaming down her face. It was the one she had gotten for Josh nearly a month ago now, but it felt like ages. She had seen the small copper necklace in the shop window in the middle of November, the one black ring at its end grabbing her attention, and so she had bought it for him, to replace the old silver one at his jeans that fell off at least once a week. That had been 5 days before he told her, and now it was back. She sat on a fluffy green carpet, one hand holding the box, while the other one clinched into the soft material around her, as if that would take her back into the happy Christmas mood. It didn't completely work, of course not, but at least she managed to wipe off the tears off her face and put the box back into the bag, taking out a present for her granddad instead. She turned up the happy music a bit in order to let it work its magic on her and force a smile onto her face before getting back to wrapping the present. The box stayed untouched by her hands, but not by her mind. Okay, so that was this week's Christmas story part. I really hope you enjoyed it. As I said, let me know in the comments down below, or give it a little thumbs up if you did. As usual, the first parts will be in the description below, just as well as my Wattpad account link. And yeah, I think that's it. I hope you always have a reason to smile for every day, and I will see you soon. Goodbye!